Welcome back to another episode of the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, a platform created to entertain, educate, and grow the game of tennis at all levels. My friends call me Ship, but this show isn't about me. We will be bringing you interviews with coaches, community leaders, and players, along with updates about tennis happening around the world. Tennis is a culture, and we are all writing tennis history together. Today, I am here with Vuk Budic. Vuk, I've known for a little while. He played for 5 years at the University of Illinois. Just to give a little background information on Vuk, as a junior, Vuk was an under 16 and under 18 Irish national champion in singles. He was the under 14 and under 16 doubles national champion while he spent time in Ireland. He was also the 2016 IHSA boys singles state champion. For the state of Illinois, he was the state champion in 2016. He was also a ranked junior from playing ITFs. In college, like I said, he played for 5 years at University of Illinois. 2021 Big Ten champion, 2019 and 2021 Big Ten sportsmanship honoree. Probably would have got another one in 2020 if it wasn't for COVID. And 2019 he won the Most Improved award, from his team. At the Finding Illini, Vuk has been a staple in Champaign and was, in my opinion, is a fan favorite. Vuk, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much for having me, Kyle. Happy to be on here. Get to spend some time with you and talk tennis.
Vuk, I am super excited to have you on here. I just think not everyone has the background to, have had that experience, being a junior player in the United States and then being a junior player in a different country, where obviously cultures are different and maybe the way things are done might be different. And then to obviously very cool, come full circle back to the United States, getting that high school singles state championship your senior year. And then obviously, 5 years of college tennis back in the States, you've kind of had the opportunity, to do a little bit of everything. And we're definitely going to make sure that we get that perspective, from you as we move into this, just because I think that's such a cool thing. But I have to start, I always ask, what is your racket of choice? What are you playing with,
Vuk? So from about 14 until I finished college, I was playing with the Head Prestige. And since I've graduated, one of my good friends, Mitch, he's a racket engineer at Wilson, and he's had me using the Wilson Shift now for a while. I used it when I was still a prototype, and I've been using it for about a year and a half, let's say. And I've slowly moved away from the Prestige, but I used the Head Prestige for quite some time. Same specs as I do now. I do have some weight in the racket, and it's strung at 57, and then strings are either Torbite or Luxon 4G, depending what I can get my hands on.
You got all my follow-up questions on the racket. That's perfect. That was all the things I was going to ask. That's awesome.
I listen to Zeke. So.
Perfect. That's perfect. What is so we got to follow up obviously with, one of my favorite questions. Do you have a memory of, who was the first person to really kick your butt?
Oh, that was, I think, my first USTA tournament. It was Indicator. I was probably 9 playing under 12s tournament, I think, and Colin Sangren beat me 0-0.
Wow. It's always that double bagel, or just like it's brutal, and everybody has that memory. And if you think about it long enough, I think you can still feel it. Probably. I mean, that's those tough losses. They never leave us. That's part of the game, though.
But I think that's how I knew that tennis was a sport for me. You get double bagel, and you're like, let's keep doing this. Perfect start. It's good that I didn't give up then.
Yeah, that's true. It is a good thing that you didn't give up. Obviously, you've had, a lot of diverse experiences. Vuk, I think just to kind of give listeners, I I broke into it, but maybe if you could give us a timeline of, kind of, obviously when you started tennis, up until what point then you guys moved. If you could kind of give us a timeline of when you were where and how that worked, maybe that'll kind of help us whenever we're sharing, give a little perspective.
Yeah, my life story is a little bit confusing when people start asking me questions, so I usually just give a little snippet of my life. But yeah, I was born in Champaign because my mom was a professor there at Illinois, and I lived there for the first 11 years of my life. I'd say I started just observing tennis around the age of 6 or 7. As my brother played, he went to Central High School, and so my he practiced at Atkins Tennis Center, and so my parents would take him to tournaments, and then I just tag along, and I was very interested just from watching him. And I picked up the racket around 6 or 7 and started taking my first lessons in Atkins, and that's where I played up until I was 11. Besides a 1 year break, I was in Serbia for fourth grade. So when I was around 10, and there I played on the clay as well. Then moved back to Champaign for a year, and then when I was 11, I moved to Ireland, to Dublin, Ireland, where I lived from 11 until 17 and a half, approximately. But yeah, it all started in Champaign. So it was very special for me when I got to go back and play there in college.
Yeah, and then obviously, coming
Yeah,
back for that senior year before, after you've won those national titles over there in Ireland, to come back and just be like, oh, it's not a fluke. I can take care of this state title too. Uh,
yeah. I was, yeah. I guess we can touch on Ireland as well, but that senior year was an interesting one because I hurt myself in it was like December 9th, I think was the date, and I was supposed to move later in the month to Deerfield. I hurt my knee. It was this cold facility, and I was just I wasn't warmed up properly, and I hurt my knee. And then so I didn't hit a ball from early December until March 1st. And then I practiced for 2 weeks, and then the season started. So I was just happy to be out there on the court. I wasn't even practicing. I wasn't in the best physical shape, to be perfectly honest, at the start of the season. But I I picked it back up. But I was just sort of living a normal high school life, which isn't what I imagined. But I was very accepting of my situation, the fact that I was injured, and I was kind of just enjoying a new school and meeting new people. And then once I got healthy, I started the tennis back up again. But I was very 50-50 of whether I'd even be healthy enough. My knee was pretty bad.
so obviously you kind of have this weird perspective on, kind of what junior tennis looks like. Not weird, but unique, of junior tennis looks like in the United States, and then obviously over in Ireland. And then you said, did you play any tournaments while you were in Serbia?
In Serbia, I did. I played the just local tournaments and I
Right.
think one national tournament for like a year-end nationals.
So you've got a little perspective,
Yeah.
between a little bit in Serbia, but probably, a lot in Ireland. And then you can see obviously what's happening and has been happening in the United States. Um, how do things function differently in Ireland as far as rankings, ratings, and how that works? Is there a different focus in the
It's
junior tennis over there, or how does it work?
I'm trying to remember exactly. I know we had levels to tournaments. There are different levels just as here we have, I think it's 1 through 5, right? So over there, there's a similar thing where you play certain tournaments, build up your ranking, and then that would always count towards this big national tournament. I was at this really prestigious tennis club in Dublin called Fitzwilliam Lawn Tennis Club, and and that's what everyone was sort of building towards the whole year. But yeah, I'd say similar. I did listen to Zeke's podcast, so I'll go off what he said there. And I felt that as I got older, people started caring less about the tournaments. I felt like when I was in my under 12s to under 16s, people really, really, everyone played the tournaments. And then
Mm-hmm.
people started transitioning out and just playing more around Europe. But I think it's very important to play those tournaments and prove yourself as well, because I never liked the I'm going to step back and not show myself and then just go off and play these tournaments when it's very likely that you could also lose locally. So I'd say it operated similarly to how it does here in the U.S. in the grand scheme of things, but obviously on a much smaller scale. Ireland is probably the size of Illinois and has half the population. So um, it's definitely a lot smaller, but
Definitely a little different.
yeah, and I guess one thing that I really enjoyed about tennis in Ireland was the fact that they had these leagues in clubs. So like men's leagues, I started playing men's leagues from when I was 14 years old, and so that'd be like once per week. It was great fun with the guys in the club. You just go off, play the match, everyone's having a good time, but it was really good match experience as well. And it can obviously be hard to get, if you only have a tournament on the weekends. But I was able to play these leagues to get at least one good match per week. And as a 14-year-old, like, yeah, you can be good, but they're still grown men. So it's always going to be a challenge when you're playing against them when you're still young. So it was a good experience for me.
I'm definitely a believer that it's very valuable for juniors to mix in and play with adults and see different playing styles and kind of problem solve, how to
Yeah.
win against different people. So yeah, no, I could see how that would be a lot of fun. I have no doubt that that would be, a really cool kind of way just to get out and get better. I'm sure you got the opportunity to play a lot of doubles that way
Yeah.
with
Yeah. We
leagues.
played. It was singles and doubles. There are two leagues.
Did you find that the people, I don't know, how competitive was it, with league play? Like if you're getting down there and playing singles, were people really grinding or people kind of joking, having fun? Like what was the competitive level
It
with
was
league
competitive.
play? Was
It was
it?
competitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one was just brushing off a loss like it's nothing. People were trying. Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. But I think that
I'm
was,
sure they didn't want to lose to the 14-year-old.
yeah, no, I wouldn't either.
That's tough
It,
to swallow. That's a little tough sometimes. It happens, but whatever.
I know.
Um,
I think I started feeling that when I was around 20 years old, 25 now. I started feeling that I really don't want to lose to some junior, regardless of who they are or how good they are.
Yeah, no, it's yes. I think I think there's definitely a pride thing there
Yeah.
whenever you play someone younger than you, and especially that's significantly younger at this point.
Yeah.
So, you got the opportunity to work with, obviously, with you moving so much, a handful of coaches. You've had different coaches and juniors, and then obviously had a great coaching staff at University of Illinois. Um,
Yeah.
you take all those things from all those coaches, and it's hard to kind of impart all that wisdom because it's years and years worth. But if you were going to give a piece of advice that you feel like every junior tennis player needs to hear, what do you think you would probably share with them?
One piece of advice.
Yeah, just pick one, and it doesn't have
I'd
to be something crazy, but just like what's a piece of advice you think junior tennis players need to hear?
I'd say be open-minded and listen to your coaches because they're there to help you. And if you're showing up, you have to think that your best interest is in their hearts. So I'd say, listen to your coaches and really absorb. I think a lot of players can, or you could have a group of players that show up to the same tennis lesson, and some will get a lot more out of it than others do. And especially if family doesn't have resources, something, and you really have to maximize your time on court, I'd say really just be a sponge when you're at practice. That's from the time you're 12 throughout college. Always listen and also experiment on the court, especially in practice. You have absolutely nothing to lose. So I'd say, yeah, just listen to different perspectives and from different coaches and just at least think about these things, how they apply to your game, whatever someone's telling you, and try them out. And if it works, great. If not, at least you know that it's not for you.
Now, Vuk, I'm decently familiar with the way that you play tennis. I've seen you play more than a handful of times. And
Yeah.
I think one thing that you could probably speak to would be maybe sharing what is the hardest adjustment, in whether it be in level or skill set or whatever, and making that jump from being, a good junior tennis player to being a really quality college level tennis player at a strong program.
I I think a lot of it is physical. I started feeling that when I was ending high school. like I would always consider myself as a good competitor. I fought hard and everything, but I think that once you reach that 17, I was playing at Futures over the summer against Austin Smith. He played at Georgia, very highly ranked in college tennis. And I just remember it was just a step up in intensity. And I think that's one thing that you really feel. And as I was progressing from 14 to 16 to 18, and then as another level in college completely, I'd say just the intensity with which people play each point, it just becomes like the average level gets so much higher. I'd say because everyone knows how to hit the ball, but I mean you just have these matches where you're just fighting for each point. Whereas I think in juniors and a lot of tournaments, like you can just get by with relying on your skill more. So, but I think yeah, being physically ready is a very important part of the men's game, and as you progress through the levels.
Do you think that that level of intensity can be that you can raise your level and your level of intensity and prepare yourself for that, enough in your practice sessions, in the way that someone practices? Or do you think that still a large part of that comes just from the experience of doing it?
Well, like when I say intensity, it is physical intensity, but it's also mental. It's just the
Right.
full on competitiveness of attacking someone and putting your game on them as well. So there's two sides to it. And I think the physical you can prepare as best as you can in match. You're always going to have the nerves that can affect even a great athlete. You can start cramping just from being nervous. That happens. But I think it's just like the awareness and the sharpness that people approach their matches with as you move up the levels. That's really what matters as well. It's just like you can feel the intent of a better player as soon as you're out there. And I think that's something you can practice from a very young age, just being focused and competitive and really thinking about your game even as you're playing, like what's working and am I really making this person feel the pressure?
Yeah, I think that's great, information. And I think the people that are listening, you can prepare, for battle. You can put in the extra miles, you can get your cardio right. But when you get to that college level, it's almost like mental warfare. It's that next level of just you have to bring it and that next level of pressure. But there's this cool thing with college tennis of like, you're not just playing for yourself. And you are someone who I feel like you were, I remember when you first got into the lineup and then you were out of the lineup and then you really made a name for yourself in doubles at one point. And then, you played a lot, you wore a lot of different hats, during your time at Illinois. And I always thought that was really cool. And I personally, was really impressed with the improvements that you made during your time at University of Illinois. My question would be, did you feel like success in doubles led to you having more success in singles? That's one question. And then an additional question is, what part of your game do you feel like had to improve the most when you got to the college level? Did your serve need to improve the most? Forehand, backhand, you know, overall, just was it consistency? Like, what part of your game personally do you feel like you had to put the most work in on? So, what are your
Um,
thoughts on that?
so I think doing well in doubles definitely helps. It makes you feel like you belong. But I think singles is a completely different beast as well. And so just as a sort of backstory, I wanted to go to as good of a school as I can, and I was completely okay with not playing my first 2 years. Like I'll just be happy to play whatever. And unfortunately, Brad saw something in me with doubles with Vukic. We got to play a decent amount there,
It
and
was fun to
so
watch.
yeah, it was good. He's a good partner.
Yeah, for sure. Solid partner.
Yeah, so he definitely helped there. But I want to go to a school where it's because I never spent time in academies like a lot of my peers did growing up. I was just group lessons at clubs. So I want to go and just get as good as I can. So I believed in myself that whichever school I went to, even if I didn't play as much singles as I did as I wanted to at the start, that I would eventually get there. And so I had a goal in mind, and I just want to get as good as I can. And I say, going back to your question there of what I felt improved the most was my offense, I'd say, because I was in Ireland, we played on very fast courts, like all the outdoor courts were carpet with sand, like astroturf basically, and you play when it rains. And so you might imagine, okay, fast court, big swings and everything, but I mean the ball just skids through the court. So a lot of my game was just redirecting it, and I had no forehand inside out as a weapon. I could only go inside in. Like if I went inside out, it was going for broke, and I was always consistent. But I'd say I learned how to more consistently press with my offensive shots, and I always like to come in, continue to do that. And I'd say my serve improved a decent amount while I was there, but I'd say it was just the learning how to attack consistently as well, instead of just like going for a big shot.
Do you feel like you had to almost move from being a counter puncher to more of taking on the mindset of an aggressive baseliner? Is that kind of what it was?
Definitely, definitely, because especially in my first year, I was not as fast um, as I was later on. Brad had me running a lot after about halfway through my freshman season. I got out of the gym and just went on the track all the time, and that really helped me. I got a lot more agile, and obviously, if you have more time, if you get to the ball faster, then you can do more with it. There's pretty simple there. So I think my agility and speed greatly improved as well. Like there's a big focus on tennis, but yeah, it was more because I'm not a good enough counterpuncher to be doing that all day. I The coaches always told me I'm strong. That was one thing Vuki told me my sophomore year is like, hey, I don't know why you're grinding so much. Like you're strong, just hit the ball as hard as you can. And that's kind of what I started doing for a while. And I think my junior year, like I was just pretty much just hitting it as hard as I can. It was my most successful year.
It reminds me of, and I can't remember the exact context of the story, but there was an article at one point that came out where when Roddick, obviously Andy Roddick had some really early success. And then obviously, top 10 player for years and years and years, couldn't quite get over the hump. At one point or another, when he switched coaches, one of the things that coach did was like, told him, you've got to slim down. You got to lose weight. And Roddick's response was, well, I'm not going to be able to hit the ball as hard. And the coach, to justify it to him, he said, how fast were you serving when you were at that weight? You weren't not hitting the ball hard then.
Yeah.
Just because you're dropping that weight, you've got to be faster. And when you're getting to the ball, you're going to be, you're going to have the opportunity to hit the shots you actually want to hit, and you're going to be in more of these points. And that was, when he made that switch, that was another huge year for Roddick. But I remember, years ago, and I think it's, like you're saying, kind of similar for you. It's like you are, very physically fit. You could hit the ball hard. And then you said you put in the time on the track. And I think that's advice that anybody who's trying to play tennis at any level, whether it's a junior, that's a beginner, intermediate, advanced, I always tell people, the level of fitness has to match the level of tennis. And, as your talent improves, you've got to really make sure that, you can get yourself in position to actually hit those shots. And if you can't, it's time to maybe put in some time on the track or bust out the jump rope or whatever it is that you need to do to be a little bit more agile. But no, I think that people could take a lot, from that. Um, Vuk, this is, I usually ask people what their college recruiting process was like, but I feel like yours is unique. But if you wanted to share maybe a little bit about kind of how that worked for you, I think that's an interesting, little tidbit about you.
Yeah. So I was still living in Ireland when I started that recruiting process. So I did it as a lot of internationals do. You make a video, so it's still out there on YouTube, like 16-year-old me, something like that.
Legend stuff. Yeah.
I'm out there on YouTube. So I made that video. My fitness coach made it for me. It's just me hitting with my tennis coach. And I started just getting emails off the website, looking at like top 75 rankings and and looking at schools that I thought would be a good fit, excuse me, academically and tennis wise as well. And there was some interest, and some schools are very keen to start the process, others not as much. That's just how it is. I'm sure they get hundreds and hundreds of emails from recruits. So I started talking to some, and I'd get on phone calls. They'd talk about where they'd see me in the team, but it was very tricky, obviously, being overseas because they have to commit to you and maybe not see you. And I was initially, after all these discussions, I verbally committed to Wake Forest. After the assistant coach at the time, Jeremy Feldman, he came to Dublin and he watched me, and I verbally committed. And then I moved back here to the Chicago area, and I started playing high school. And for various reasons, Wake Forest just didn't end up being as good of a fit as they did before. And fortunately, I was in state and knew some people from College Park Athletic Club, tennis club here in Chicago, like Bazarnik, who played there, and he got me in touch with Brad and Kos. And so then Kos came out to state and watched me. But it was all international at the start, just through YouTube and email, basically, and calls. So it's not as many opportunities to visit or even see these coaches and players face to face. But I mean, I grew up here in America. But my mom's a professor. We're familiar with the colleges in the States. So
I feel like it worked out pretty well, and you got to be a part of some pretty cool teams and have some pretty great
yeah,
teammates. Obviously, I mean, it was you guys had some pretty cool runs, and I was glad after the whole COVID thing happened that you guys got the opportunity to have that COVID year and kind of give it one more. Uh, I I felt like you guys deserved that. That season didn't quite start off the way that you guys had hoped, but I come postseason, I had a lot of belief that you guys could make a run at something, and then COVID happens, and it's wild, and I'm like, wow, all that building, all those years, and it's just over. I
yeah.
was in disbelief, and then you're not the only team I'm sure that felt that way. Um, you know, how do you feel like with the COVID situation? Obviously, it's unique, but do you feel like you guys as a team were able to take advantage of that time? Do you feel like you guys were able to put in some work and really improve? And is that what it, eventually led? Like it takes a whole team, to win a championship like you
Yeah.
guys did, you know, and you guys had a lot of really strong players on that team. Like, did the COVID year and maybe some bonding that happened or some growth that happened, is that what helped prepare you that maybe made you come back and allowed you guys to get that Big Ten championship?
I, I think with the people that we had in my class, I just think that we're all so determined. It was kind of a no brainer once we had the option to come back, and I think that's definitely one thing that really helped us work towards and eventually get that Big Ten title. It was just like we came back with a purpose. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to. It was just like, yes, can we play? Great, let's do it. Let's train hard and practice. But yeah, I mean, COVID was definitely an interesting time. It was in some ways amazing for me because I was really struggling with a right hip injury at the start. I got injured on team trip and I was really struggling to move. Obviously, it's foreign tennis. I can like move out to my forehand that much. It was that right hip. So I didn't play tennis for 2 to 3 months as soon as the season ended. So for me, it was very fortunate actually, and I feel like it was a interesting period of time in general for a lot of people, just with all the lockdowns and there's a lot of self reflection there. And we did have meetings, and it wasn't as much about tennis, but just about thinking about your game. We'd have these Zoom meetings with the team, we'd have these assignments, and so you could still work on yourself. And everyone was scattered throughout the country, but I think yeah, when something's cut short like that, we all came back with a purpose, and I think that was the one of the defining things there. I think we had a very motivated class.
Yeah, no, and I feel like it had a pretty good ending. I was not thrilled with the way that with COVID that they seeded for the NCAA team event at the end of that year. I thought that was a pretty rough draw for you guys, as good as that Illinois team was. having to play that Florida team in the round of 16 was pretty tough. I think may have made it a little bit farther along had you not had to run into the champions in the round of 16, but that's in the past now.
I, I think
Go
we're
ahead.
definitely a Elite Eight team for sure. And it was unfortunate just with the Big Ten Conference, not as much travel going on there. So we were seeded 16 for that tournament, and then we lost in round of 16, and then the NCAA granted us the 8 ranking as their final ranking, 8th. So, which is interesting to me. If you're a team and you lose in the round of 16, ranked seeded 16th, that you get the final ranking of 8. So they gave us our ranking retrospectively, unfortunately.
And I think people who watch the NCAA tournament this year would say, there's depending on the sometimes there's just like an outright ringer, like a shoe in, and you're just like, wow, how is that team, what they are. But going into the NCAA's this year, I was like, there's like 6 teams right now that I would not be surprised if they won it. And
Yeah.
you guys were definitely one of those where I'm like, man, they have a puncher's chance, and draw is gonna really matter. And if you can get into that final or get into that semifinal, and the doubles points going to really matter. And you guys had, several different ways to play your lineup. I feel like, you had some guys at the bottom of the lineup in and out, depending on matchups, that you could kind of switch things up. And it was kind of unique having so much experience on that roster. And then, like you said, it was unfortunate. And then interesting that the NCAA was like, oh yeah, but by the way, we think you were a top 8 team, so we'll go ahead
Yeah.
and acknowledge it after the fact. It's like, thanks, man.
Yeah.
You could have maybe done that before, but
Yeah.
whatever. Vuk, do you have anything that, being someone that's obviously been around tennis as much as you have, would like to see change about the way that it be junior tennis or the college level or the pro level is currently structured? Is there anything that you would like to see change?
Well, I know the obviously prize money is always a big topic, and just briefly on that, I think it's very tricky about how you're going to distribute money, from the top to lower levels, because a lot of it is just consumer demand as well. They want to see the best on the biggest stages
Right.
as well there. But I'm not sure how junior tennis has been recently, but I've felt even since COVID there have been some changes of the types of tournaments that there are. I feel like there's a lot more UTR Pro Tour events, Pro Tennis Tour events,
Mm-hmm.
and not as many like USTA Men's Opens. And
Men's
I
opens
think,
are dying. It's a
yeah,
dying breed.
yeah,
It's
and
sad. It's so sad.
not that this is not that they're the most important kind of tournaments, but I think that it gives even college players like over the summer more opportunities to compete than taking a week long tournament, somewhere in California or whatever, is to play the UTR Pro Tour. I think just having more men's opens, first of all, you get some prize money, and
Yeah.
then also just a lot of matches in span of 2-3 days. So
And the money in those events doesn't have to be crazy, but it's like if you can help cover people's expenses while they're trying to get their match play in, I think it's
yeah,
great. I always thought men's opens were awesome. I started playing men's opens when I was like 15, and I always got my butt handed to me. I was, not on level, but they were close, and it was just another chance to play. Um,
but
I always thought was weird, uh, in the way that their rankings work, and like you talk about how important it was and how great it was that you got the opportunity to play, in that men's league, right?
yeah,
I've never understood why. So like in the rankings, if you are, let's say you're 14 years old, and you win an 18 and under match, whatever the level be, those points count for your 18s ranking, 16s ranking, and 14s ranking. But
interesting.
obviously, your 14s matches don't count for your 18s ranking. Like that's now they've done it where like I think like 15%, like a protected ranking. Like when you age out, it goes with you or something like that. That's kind of a newer thing that they've added since COVID. But even still, like your 18s points, if you're 16 and you play in 18s, those points count for 18s and they double down and count towards your 16s ranking if it's one of your top. I think it counts your top 6 results, right? So it would count. Why does the USTA not have it where I don't care if it counts for all of them But why do men's open and women's open matches, those ranking points, why are they not the same ranking system? And why would a men's open match, if you're a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old playing men's opens and you win a couple rounds and you get points, why those ranking points don't count and trickle down into your junior ranking? Because I think that would incentivize juniors to go out and play with adults. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good thing for their development, personally.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I guess maybe just the hardest thing there would be if you're just comparing juniors to juniors and then you have adults, it's like how do you do that points wise? How would you take your points from the adult tour down to the juniors where it's all junior tennis players? Maybe
Yeah, it's a
that's
little different. Even maybe if they counted your points as half points, I don't even know.
yeah,
But like, if you're trying to decide who the best 12 and under player is, and you're counting someone's, level 6, which is one of the lower levels, points that they got as a 12-year-old because they're a strong 12, and it's trickling down and counting for their 12s ranking, and locally that's getting them seated or whatever. To me, it's almost the same thing. I feel like it's very adjacent because these men's opens that they're getting into aren't going to be level 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to
yeah,
be a lower level. So there's not a ton of points, but I just think it would incentivize it maybe for the juniors to play. I don't know.
yeah.
It's always been a thought that I thought was weird. You were about to say something earlier before I went on that
Oh, I
tangent.
lost it.
You lost it. I'm so
I
sorry.
lost it.
You
No,
had
no,
the
you're
look
fine.
on
You're
your
fine.
face. You had the look on your face. I do that sometimes. That's something that's I always thought was weird. And I'm like, I have to say that because hopefully someday someone from the USTA will listen to this and be like, you're right. That is weird. We should want juniors playing with adults, and maybe we should do that. So I don't know, but no, let's
But
see.
any major changes? I'm sorry, Kyle. I don't think I have any.
You
Do
don't
you
have
have?
any. I
Yeah,
think that speaks volume to though with the experiences that you have because I feel like some people pretty well that are playing obviously or even coaching at the pro level now. You've played a lot of college tennis and obviously you came through junior tennis. So I think that speaks highly of I think the product that's out there right now for college tennis is great,
yeah,
and I think that says a lot. And then obviously, pro tennis is perfect, and the allocation of money is what you were kind of talking about a
yeah.
little bit earlier. But
I've
if
This is just my thought in general about like the ATP rankings. I'd consider anyone top 500 to be an elite tennis player, and if there's any way for them to at least break even or somewhere along the lines there, I feel like that would be pretty fair because that's an extremely high level of tennis, I'd say.
you're a top 500 basketball player in the world, you are in the NBA.
Yeah,
You're in the NBA at least on a two-way contract. And
yeah,
people, if you have a favorite team and they sign someone on a two-way, you probably know that guy's name. you know but if I asked you right now, who's your favorite, do you know guys ranked between 400 500? I know a few because I pay attention to that level, but
yeah,
the average fan doesn't, and I think that that's unfortunate. Um and I think, like you said, finding a way for those people to break even and for that money to trickle down to where it needs to is what it's going to take for us to grow the game.
yeah. No, definitely, definitely.
Okay. So you don't have any changes. Do you have any tennis hot takes? Just anything in general? Like, do you have anything that's like a pet peeve or just like something that you're just adamant about that you get in arguments about? Like, do you have it? What do you get fired up about, Vuk? Anything?
I wouldn't call this the hottest take of all time, but getting rid of lets, I really like the college rule of just play the point. Uh, it's just
That's
80% of the time the
interesting.
serve just goes over and it's a little bit awkward and you just like dink the return back and then you play out the rest of the point. And then when I watch it on TV, it's like there's just big dramatic pause. Now we're taking a let and I'm taking the serve again and everything. And sometimes you get lucky and it's just like it is from a baseline point. Sometimes you get very lucky, sometimes you're unlucky and you just move forward. That's
I don't hate that. I actually think that would be maybe a good way to move. Um, at that level, obviously, it would it would add a level of maybe interest for the people watching. It's like that's going to be the point that ends up on ESPN where it's something crazy, where it's a serve and it's a net court. It ends up being some crazy scrambling situation on on a big point.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a solid hot take. And the reason, you say it's not the hottest it takes, but I'm going to be honest, there's someone that's going to listen to us be like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're totally
Yeah.
going to get someone fired up about that. But I don't hate that idea. And if they did that, I wouldn't be mad about it. I actually think that'd be cool. I think anyone who was paying attention to the French Open today might have the hot take that they need to implement um, replay technology when they can check whether or not a ball double bounced.
Oh,
That
oh,
happened
double
today.
bounce.
Yeah,
Okay.
that happened today on a big point in the Cerundolo Runa match. Ended up not making a huge difference because I think that was in a set that Cerundolo won and then Runa won in the fifth. But
Yeah.
that was like a big deal on Twitter today. Was about the
That
double
was
bounce.
I saw that point. So that was officially double bounce.
But they didn't call it as a double bounce. But on the
Yeah.
replay, everyone on Twitter was saying that was definitely a double bounce. And I'm like, there's a really easy way for us to, eliminate it. It's like give the chair, the ability to watch the replay and make the right call. And then we move on and then people won't argue about it on Twitter.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something they
Uh,
should look at too.
That's a
We
good
have
one.
the
That's a good one.
technology. We have the technology to do it.
Cameras are everywhere.
Yeah,
Um,
they
yeah,
definitely are.
on the let court one, a fun one is that when someone when you're returning and someone hits it and it sits up nicely for you,
Yeah.
and then you smack it, and then it just does the same thing. It hits the top of the net, and then it sits up for them, and then you're just scrambling and probably lose the point. So I feel like the crowds would like that. There'd be a lot of moves and outs if you're
Yeah.
watching
Oh
it.
yeah. I think people would be loud. There'd be a gasp and then a
Yeah,
louder gasp and some lady would scream and then someone dang near gets smacked with a ball because they're scrambling. Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
pretty rough.
it's very
Um,
dramatic.
Vuk, this is your shout out opportunity. I Is there someone who you played with, played against, coached, or saw play, and you can't believe that they didn't play college tennis, or you were convinced they were going to go pro, and they didn't make it or even try?
Oh boy, tough spot here.
While you're thinking, I will tell you, Vuk, you are one person that I know you love tennis so much. You are very studious, and obviously, you're going to have a great career with what you're doing. But I was like, Vuk's not at least going to take a year or two and do the futures and go for it. I'm like, this guy loves to play. He loves to compete, and he's so smart. I was initially surprised, but the more I've gotten to know you, like I understand your brain a little bit more. And obviously, didn't make that decision, but
I
you're someone that came to mind for me with this same question.
just clear my name, I guess. I mean, I got to play those futures throughout school and just like summers very casually picked up 2 points there. And if I studied anything else besides accounting, I would have at least taken from when I finished school until when I started work to play. But I was just studying for my CPA exams that summer. Like I was watching the live scores, watching my friends play the futures in Champaign while I was here in Chicago studying. So I knew for my career long term would be good. But I mean, that's obviously tennis over accounting in my heart 100%. And I feel like I'd love to go out and play, but obviously it is financially difficult as well, to come up with the
Yeah.
resources and everything. But yeah, I mean, a big part of me, and it's never too late. I'm still 25 and I'm young, so
Who
I
knows?
I think I I still have time there, and I think as a shout out, I'd like to give a shout out to AB. I think he has Alex Brown, a lot of potential there, so hopefully he goes after it. Not a lot of people semi challenger when they're in school, so
That's a big serve.
yeah, yeah,
Big
sure.
serve. When that guy's feeling his serve, man, I've seen a few of them. And like you said, to be in college and to semi a challenger is impressive. That was quite the run that he had.
Yeah, and he's an extremely competitive guy as well. Um, he can, when it's close, he's not afraid to go for it, and I feel like that's one thing as you move up the levels as well. You know, that's what all those top guys do. You see, I think this. I'm not picking a good example of for a college tennis deuce point or something like that, but just college matches in general, players are tighter. But when you watch those top guys on TV, it's like fifth set, 5-all deuce, and they're just swinging as hard as they can, you know. And I think that's what it takes at the top level. Like they just have nerves of steel. So,
Yeah, you have to have those nerves of steel.
yeah,
Vuk, if you could go back in time and give advice maybe to your younger self, in one of those highly developmental years, and I'll let you pick one, whether it's giving advice to yourself at 13, 14, 15, 16, or even 18, when you're first going to college, is there anything that you would have told yourself or even something you would have told yourself that would have, really made a difference in your level or in your success? As a tennis player? Like, is there any advice you would have given your younger self?
I think I'd say definitely practice your serve more. I never had a bomb, and I could have worked on my shoulder flexibility a lot more. I have incredibly tight shoulders. That's always been my problem, and I always because I had like bad hips as well as always working on my flexibility in my lower body, but I should have definitely focused on the upper body more as well to try and loosen up. I think serve, and then I mean Vukic gave me great advice when I was a sophomore. He was just like, "Why are you so nice on court? Why aren't you hitting the ball harder, using your size and strength?" And I think that's something that I definitely probably needed even at like 16 because I was always just not that you shouldn't ever be fair, but you can be different levels of nice on court and how much you compliment your opponent's shots and everything, and it's all very nice and everything. But at the end of the day, you're trying to beat them and they're trying to beat you. So I think just if I got that mentality, which I started my junior year, if I had that earlier on in my tennis career, it would have been good because I think I had some, as most people do, some highs and lows in my tennis career, and I think that mentality could have probably pulled me out of some of my lows that I was stuck in for a while. I had a pretty terrible 16 through 17, just with growth spurts and all
Mm-hmm.
these different things. I think it's tough at that age sometimes. Like you even like I lost some coordination in my teenage years and try and get used to like a growing body and everything. But I think that different mentality would have really helped me at a younger age. I think just
Yeah.
to like I was always very competitive, but it's also just with your mindset towards your opponent, as well.
Yes. No, I think I think that would have made a big difference for you. People that don't know you, uh, you definitely don't come across as the guy with the mean streak. And usually that I think obviously you being a kind person leads to you winning sportsmanship awards and kind of some of the honors and the things that you've been recognized for. I would like to think that even if you could give that advice to your 16-year-old self, you're still too nice. I think those awards still would have come. You could have afforded to be slightly less
Well,
polite, and I think you still would have been in the running, for
well,
some of those recognitions.
thank you, Kyle. I got that award when I was a junior, and I was like, that was the meanest I've ever been in my life. How did I get this? Yeah,
you're, you're, there was like
yeah,
you're like my mean streak finally came out,
yeah,
and now it's you know what I've seen that happen before at a junior tournament at like a Midwest level event. It's like the reason you got it that year is it happened to a kid that it was like super nice kid, but all weekend long they were super competitive, and everyone was noticing just how hard they were competing, but then off the
yeah,
court they're nice to everyone. And so it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you bring this next level, but because you were being so aggressive, you were standing out in a way that you never had. And so now
yeah,
it's like, hey, we should probably recognize how nice this guy is. Like, look at the way he competes. It's like you finally, I think that's how it works sometimes. Like you said, it's the meanest you've ever been, or you feel like, and all of a
yeah,
sudden you get the award. I don't think you're the
yeah,
first person that's ever happened to, but it happened to somebody good. So that's a good thing. Vuk, we're kind of coming close to the end here. I've got a few more questions
yeah.
left for you, and then I'll get you on your way. But if I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what your happiest tennis moment is.
I think by far the happiest moment had to be that Big Ten title. I think that's just it was straight euphoria. We're all just so happy that we finally got over that hump. You know, we've all won some matches um, against the Buckeyes, but I think just when we finally got it, that was by far, you know, we're all just delighted because it was 5 years of hard work and of upsets and of getting close, and it just never really worked out. And then just in at some tennis center in Nebraska, we finally managed to make it happen. So I'd say that by far, and then also my winning the high school here was very interesting for me. But one of my most rewarding wins was under 18. I was playing very, very bad tennis, I'd say. Like my warm ups were terrible. And it was something where I'm more just happy for myself of how I got over the hump. Like I was not feeling too good tennis wise, but mentally I was just very focused and just taking away all judgment from myself. And I managed to win that tournament when I really like I could have lost in the second round. I was playing pretty terribly, but I and then I got better as the tournament went on. But I think just that was one memory that I just it really took a lot of mental strength to get over. So I was very happy there, but I think just with the team aspect of Illinois and against Ohio State, that was probably my favorite memory there. I think
Yeah,
picking up the first point as well is always a good one.
for those people that don't follow college tennis very closely, Ohio State, is a very strong program, and you guys had some battles, but hadn't quite, gotten over the hump
Yeah,
against them. Some really good matches and matches where it's like you guys might, get the doubles point. And you think, we're rolling and you don't quite get them, or, that day, different people on the roster have gotten their wins, but maybe not everyone's putting it together on the same day. And for it to, like you're saying, to all come together,
yeah,
at the right moment in that Big Ten championship, I'm sure was, like you said, it was euphoric. So
yeah.
that's exciting stuff. Here at the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, we're a big believer in giving people, their flowers. Who is someone underappreciated in the tennis community? And that could be in Ireland too. Is just it could be a coach or it's a tournament director, a community leader, a volunteer of some kind. Who's somebody that maybe doesn't get the shine that they should?
Well, I this isn't one person specifically, but I'd say just your tennis coaches in general and your fitness coaches as well. I feel like so many times people talk about the player that won the under 18 tournament and everything, but I'd say just and I think it comes with the humbleness of being a coach as well. Like you put in the work on your side, and it's a pleasure to see your student grow and succeed. But I think, I mean, without your coaches, a lot of players wouldn't be here at all. So I know I can think of someone specific if you'd like, but I think that's just
No, I
one
think
thing
that's great.
that's overlooked for sure.
I
I
think
think.
that's something that, people don't really talk about. Like there's a lot of people that play a lot of different roles and it's really easy to maybe feel underappreciated. Uh, you know, especially in those different coaching roles, when you're not, those coaches that, when you had success at Illinois and you guys win that Big Ten championship, you there wasn't somebody, giving a shout out to the person that's coming in and helping you guys do that extra fitness, or if somebody had an individual coach that they were putting in a ton of extra work with that helped them get over the hump, you know, uh, even still, it's like, Brad and Coase probably still didn't even get as much recognition as they deserve. So imagine being the coach that's playing the background. So I think that you're 100% on the mark. And for people listening to this, if you've got a private coach, thank them. Whenever you get done with your lessons, say thank you to those people. Send them a Christmas card if you got one. Make them feel like they're important because they're people too. And if they're investing in you, most people do it, not all, but a lot of people do it because they love people and they love the game and they want to give back to it. So yeah, I think that's great, Vuk. I love
Yeah.
that.
And that was one thing at Illinois that I sometimes didn't like. Brad and Coach would take a lot of the blame for losses on them, but then also give us the credit for the wins. And I was like, no, that's not fair because we're actually the ones that are playing there. So when we lose, it's not about you guys as well. But like when you win a really good match, you can bet that there was a lot of good coaching going on there. But usually when you lose, it's probably the player, not so much the coaching. I just didn't like when they, and that was one thing that I always sort of stood up to Brad about is when he would take the blame for a loss. I would say no, we're the ones that are hitting the tennis ball at the end of the day. So not to make us feel better because I don't think that teams need that.
Luke, not to steal shine from anybody else or any other coaches, but something that I noticed about you personally as things rolled on, into your fifth year and your COVID year. As much as you loved to play and to be in the lineup, there were times where it almost felt like you were another coach, on the court. You were pumping guys up, helping guys be level headed, and I noticed there at the end of the year you were spending a lot of time being on Kova's court, kind of being a support system for him, and
Yeah,
how do you feel like, I mean, could you elaborate kind of on that relationship and maybe how uh, it got to that point where you feel, because there are teams where there's players being a fifth year senior that you're going to play that role, but how did it come that you were the guy spending so much time on court one there at the
yeah.
end of your career?
I think, I mean, I was just happy to be in whatever role the coaches put me in, and I'm flattered that they have the trust in me to be on court with the players and to give advice. And I think it's because Cove and I mean, we've been teammates for 5 years and we live together. We know each other. And I think that he likes my demeanor as well. There on the court next to him, I'm not overly pumped or anything. We're just talking, sometimes having a good time. And I think that we really mesh together. And frankly, it's at that stage of Kova's tennis career, it wasn't too hard to coach him. He was already a lot more mature than he was early on. But I think, yeah, we just got along really well. And I think the coaches trusted my advice and my perspective on the game to help out people from Kova and all the way down the lineup wherever they wanted me on a given day. So
Yeah. Well,
I just sort of embraced it and tried to spread my knowledge, if we can call it that.
well, as much as there were times where I'm like, man, I would love to see, Vuk in the lineup today, or there's a matchup and I'm like, man, why is Vuk not playing? And there were times where you were, and then there were times where you weren't. And I was always curious what the lineup was going to be, especially later
Yeah.
in the year, depending on what team you were playing. I would show up, to match and be like, how are they going to play the lineup today? I would have no
Yeah.
idea. And I just always thought that was really interesting, seeing you spending a lot of time, giving advice, keeping people calm, and obviously sharing knowledge and coaching there at the end of the year, and kind of being that extra coach, as a player. It takes a lot of maturity, to be that kind of teammate and to really excel in that role. So I applaud you for that. Just the last question, I have for you here, Vuk, is who do you think needs to come on the Grassroots Tennis Pod? Keep in mind, whoever you say, you have to help us get this person on the podcast. I've basically been begging people to give me two names. I've been encouraging someone to give me like a player. It doesn't matter the level, it could be pro level, college, juniors, just someone that's passionate about tennis or maybe has an interesting story that you feel like, people need to hear, or that they have information they really need to share. And then I've been asking for maybe a coach or a community leader. But honestly, I will even just take one. Does anyone come to mind that you feel like, has needs to be sharing with the tennis world?
Yeah, I think it'd be great. I get you in touch with Gary Cahill is his name. He was the head of Tennis Ireland. He was the head coach there at the National Tennis Center where I trained. And I
Okay.
really learned a lot from him. And he's very passionate about tennis. He has his own academy there now. He was on tour with this Russian tennis player Vitaly Diatchenko, and I was their hitting partner at the U.S. Open at 2021. I think you'd have a great conversation with him because he's like a very successful coach, and he's run big programs and like the national training in Ireland. So I think that you two would have a very good conversation.
I would love to pick his brain. I would love it. I would have to talk way less, but I would definitely love to pick his brain. Vuk, thank you so much. For our listeners out there, if you love what we're doing and you're enjoying these conversations, please make sure to hit that follow button, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I have made some headway on getting these not just onto Spotify, but onto YouTube, and we are making our way. We got to get those first 100 followers on Spotify, and we're looking to get, I have to look up the exact amount, but we need those subscribers on YouTube. Share this podcast with someone that you know that's passionate about tennis. And, if you know someone that you feel like should be on the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, or maybe you have follow-up questions for Vuk, I know how to reach out to him. We could mailbag this. Make sure to reach out to us at grassrootstennispod@gmail.com. And also follow us on Instagram at Grassroots Tennis Pod. We are slowly making our way into all social media, but right now Instagram is kind of where we're starting. I've been telling people, if you will go and subscribe on YouTube and give us the like or the follow on Spotify, and then you follow us on Instagram, we will be sure to give you a follow back. We appreciate all of you. Vuk, once again, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you very much for having me, Kyle, and best luck with the podcast moving forward. I really like the name Grassroots. I think it's creative.
Well, thank you. I was trying to find something that I thought people might like, so I'm glad that you like it. It took me a while to decide what I want to do. This is something I wanted to do for a long time, and I finally just like, you know what? Let's do it. I like talking to people. Let's figure this out. So, Vuk.
Yeah. If anyone has some questions, feel free to reach out. Definitely.
Vuk's an easy guy to get a hold of. He's an open book, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kyle. Oh, yep. Sorry. Go for it.
No, I was going to say, especially now that you're done studying, right?
Yes.
Now that people can message you, it's not a big deal. So they're not interrupting studying, which is great.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Kyle. Have a great night. Yep, thank you for having me on. Bye.
Absolutely. Have a good one. Bye.